When I was very young, I was foolish enough to believe that our creed would bring an end to all these conflicts. If only I possessed the humility to say to myself, I have seen enough for one life. I have done my part. Then again, there is no greater glory than fighting to find the truth.
Last year, the 11th entry in Ubisoft's most prized series, Assassin's Creed, was released. In the 11 years prior, Assassin's Creed has been a series which has consistently dominated the gaming industry, being one of the most well-known, recognisable and influential AAA franchises on the market. And although the series has seen exceptional highs and atrocious lows that have been talked about countless times, one game in the series is very often forgotten. The game that started it all, Assassin's Creed 1. A game now so unrecognisable in comparison to the recent Greek RPG that the two don't even seem like the same franchise. Assassin's Creed 1 was a pioneer for open world games, as it released on the relatively new generation of consoles and set the base for a series that would go on to span 10 more main installments, 9 side games, 9 novels, a series of comics, a Hollywood movie, and even a cookbook. Fuck's sake, Ubisoft really know how to milk a series dry. Most fans of the series now picked up their love of the franchise at a variety of points, whether during the Ezio trilogy, the Kenway saga, or in 2018 with Odyssey. I feel sorry for you if you're in that situation. However, my first experience of the series was in 2008, a year after the first game's release, sitting at a neighbour's house in awe of the sight of a huge city coming into view as my friend galloped towards it. At the time, the extent of my gaming experience had been PlayStation 2 FIFA titles and Pokemon Platinum, so seeing this fully rendered open world filled with NPCs who seemed alive was incredible. And from that day on, I was hooked. Assassin's Creed as a concept was brought about in 2003, but not at all in the way it came to pass. Originally intended as a new Prince of Persia game, Ubisoft Montreal began development on what was intended to be a completely linear sequel released on the PS2. However, as time went on, Patrice Désilets, our Lord and Saviour, and his team began experimenting with integrating Prince of Persia's acrobatic gameplay into an open world, which could be made possible now by the announcement of the new generation of hardware from both Sony and Microsoft. Désilets, after taking an interest in secret societies throughout history, decided Prince of Persia's formula could benefit from a change, and so Prince of Persia Assassin was born. Concepts made during development were hugely influenced by the true story of the Hashashin Order. Hashashin. Something about that just sounds... An Islamic sect formed in the 11th century who are largely known of from the novel Alamut. Alamut. I'm sorry, the language of Arabic, it doesn't really lend itself to the Scottish accent. The Order spent a large part of the 11th century capturing land throughout Persian Syria, and would often take mountain fortresses, a tactic which clearly influenced the in-game base of Masyaf. They were pretty much just terrorists, to be honest. During development, an early concept sketch was that of an eagle, a piece of imagery which became significant in all of the following games. And as the main character was designed, he was given the name Altair, which translates in Arabic to bird of prey. This concept was taken further with Leaps of Faith, an idea which not only made gameplay smoother, but was also detailed in the novel Alamut as a true assassin practice. This was referenced at the very start of the game, as after a bombardment on the assassin hideout by who is thought to be the main antagonist of the game, Robert de Sable, Altair, along with 2 other assassins, perform Leaps of Faith to give the illusion of committing suicide, with the intent to show the Templars that they did not fear death. But the assassins, in real life, well, they did that. to try and, create fear by showing they don't fear death and all that. But there weren't any hay bales. They would just straight up, they just yeet themselves off buildings. Like, they were kind of fucking mental. When it came to developing gameplay, the team really worked from the ground up, developing a whole new engine for the Xbox 360 and PS3. This being the Anvil Next engine, which would then go on to be used for the next 3 installments, and then upgraded for those preceding the release of the PS4 and the Xbox One. As development was coming to an end in 2006, Ubisoft Montreal were ready to present the new game. However, the high-ups at Ubisoft were skeptical at first. The idea of not making the lead of the game, the Prince himself, was kinda divisive. Which is really weird, considering that Ubisoft can't keep a main protagonist for more than about 5 minutes nowadays. Eventually, the devs and the management came to the compromise of adapting their project into an entire new franchise, and with Patrice Désilets integrating the concept of a Creed into the game's story, the title was clear. Come on, I'm not saying the title again. I've said it like 40 times. It's in the title of the video. I'll put it here. You know what the name of the game is. And so, on November 13th, 2007, Ubisoft's new creation was released to the world. And although reception was on the whole positive, parts of the gameplay were divisive among the masses. The main gameplay draw of Assassin's Creed 1 was obviously the superpowers. Wait, no. No, that can't... Oh shit, nah, that's that shit in Greece, nah. Run that back, that just makes me physically... No! The main gameplay draw of Assassin's Creed 1, at the time at least, was the free running. Ubisoft Montreal made this their main focus when creating the open world, and the system worked perfectly in the setting of cities in the Middle Ages, the 3 in the game being Jerusalem, Acre and Damascus. Whilst making sure to try to stick to historical accuracy as much as possible, the cities were designed to aid the parkour gameplay adapted from Prince of Persia. In Ubisoft's former series, the free running sections were for the most part predefined set pieces which would lead the player in one set direction. And although Assassin's Creed was to be much more free and open, these linear sections were still attempted to be included. Many main missions, specifically assassination missions, there were very clear laid out pathways and escape routes for players to take. These sections worked well and made parkour feel smooth and seamless, but this wasn't always the case in the open world. Parkour in the open world of Assassin's Creed 1 could be enjoyable in some cases, but a lot of the time the climbing was tedious and slow, and the inputs, they didn't exactly work perfectly. Maybe this is just in hindsight, and my opinion's clouded by the near flawless parkour system that Ubisoft have mastered today, but for a game that's marketing was very focused on the free running system, its execution isn't always the best. However, the game is much more than just jumping across rooftops. AC1 also introduced Eagle Vision, an idea that came from the whole bird of prey thing that I mentioned earlier. Now, it can be argued whether the birth of this gameplay mechanic was positive or not, as it soured many gameplay experiences over the years in a bunch of games, but it's undeniable that the system was revolutionary, having huge impact on the gaming market with a near endless list of games implementing gameplay mechanics based off of it, such as the Arkham series Detective Vision, Shadow of Mordor, The Last of Us, Dishonored, the list goes on. The idea of having an alternate form of vision that allowed for the player to more easily identify friend from foe, at the time at least, was sure a positive, especially due to the clump of brown and grey clothing that all the NPCs seem to wear, no matter their intent. However, the way the system's evolved into the hand-holding, see-through walls mess of a system that it is today has been looked down on for years, and it seems that most studios are veering away from such mechanics. Another of the better systems in the game was the combat. As the series has gone on, there's been a bunch of combat systems, some a lot worse than others. Assassin's Creed Syndicate. However, AC1 arguably has the most balanced combat system in the entire series. Although very simple, the system works. The enemies aren't damage sponges, but the combat actually requires some skill and is rewarding, especially when you get a combo kill. Side note, I didn't even know there was combo kills until like 2012, like my 5th playthrough of the game. Yeah, it turns out that when you hit the enemy sword, you you hit again and then it does a combo kill and it barely ever works. It's not really explained in the tutorial, but when it does work, it's super satisfying. When it comes to counters, they're not completely overpowered. If you can pull off a counter, it's not always an instant kill, and it varies on how effective it is depending on the enemy type. Along with that, the counter window is small and varies between weapons, meaning you can't just fuck everyone up by spamming the counter button. It's overall a very rewarding and balanced combat system, and for the time it definitely worked well. The biggest flaw with the gameplay though, and the most criticised part of the whole game since its release, was the missions. Specifically, how repetitive the mission structure is. Although personally, going through each set of missions is second nature to me at this point, I do understand how this brings the game down. If you've never played the game, let me lay out the entire mission structure for you. Altair goes to a city, he opens a new area of the map by synchronizing with a viewpoint. He gathers information by either eavesdropping, pickpocketing, or just beating the shit out of someone. Then he goes to the assassin's burrow, gets a feather, you watch a cutscene, you kill a dude, then you repeat 8 more times, game over. The mission design of the game, even for 2007 standards, was subpar, and to many people just boring. And overall, it's the one part of the game that in some cases could make it unplayable for a newcomer to the series. However, this repetitive nature is truly made up for by the incredible narrative. Assassin's Creed's main story is a story of redemption in its simplest form. But when you dig deeper, it's much more than that. The game opens not on some major historical event or landmark, but in an office in what you find out to be Abstergo Industries. In the modern day, you control Desmond Miles, a man who ran away from the assassins at a young age to live a normal life. Abstergo have kidnapped him to be involved in the Animus project. Now, unlike nowadays, the dev team actually wanted things to make sense in the universe. So in-game, you get a clear explanation that the Animus is a machine that can decode the user's DNA to relive their ancestors' genetic memories. I'm going to go through the whole modern day section first and then the historical section second, so I might as well just throw up a spoiler warning for an 11-year-old game if you need it. So there you go, there's going to be spoilers. At first, Abstergo's true goal isn't clear. However, this game's narrative is truly brilliant, due to the mystery and intrigue that comes with it. If the player chooses to care about the modern day narrative, which they should, because it's the main point of the fucking series. I'm not going to get into that, that's a whole nother video. They can come across a bunch of hidden optional dialogue sequences with Lucy Stillman, an assistant to the project. Throughout the whole game, Lucy drip feeds both Desmond and the player information that at face value doesn't seem all that important, but when explored deeper, sets up most of the modern day conflict for the rest of the series. About a quarter of the way through the game, Desmond finds a code to unlock his bedroom door in his wardrobe, and this is where even more mystery comes into play. Desmond can read both Lucy and Warren Viddick's emails. Warren Viddick is the leader of the whole Abstergo project, if I didn't mention that already. It looks like this, he's just kind of an old dude with a lab coat. These emails are full of different little clues for the player to piece together throughout the game. Although the modern day in Assassin's Creed 1 is a small section of the game, it's hugely significant for the rest of the series. And the way they wrote it left the player just wanting more, with the ending being Desmond seeing his entire wall of his room covered in writings and messages, completely written in blood. The way Ubisoft wrote the modern day was near perfect, having enough interesting mini storylines and mysteries to keep the player hooked and invested in the characters, whilst also not intruding into the story of Altair. As Desmond enters the Animus for the first time, we see Altair ibn La'ahad ruthlessly killing an innocent man. To say the least, it's a hard-hitting way to introduce a protagonist, and was an excellent way to set the groundwork for one of the best character arcs in Assassin's Creed as a series. Following this, along with multiple failures and what we find out to be his mission to retrieve an object from Solomon's temple, he's taken to Al-Mualim, the leader of the assassins, and there, we as players learn the creed.
What are you doing? There are rules. We are nothing if we do not abide by the Assassin's creed. 3 simple tenets, which you seem to forget. I will remind you. First and foremost, stay your blade.
From the flesh of an innocent. I know.
And stay your tongue, unless I give you leave to use it. If you are so familiar with this tenet, then why did you kill the old man inside the temple? He was innocent. The second tenet is that which gives us strength. Hide in plain sight. Let the people mask you such that you become one with the crowd. Do you remember? Because as I hear it, you chose to expose yourself, drawing attention before you'd struck. The third and final tenet. The worst of all your betrayals. Never compromise the Brotherhood. Its meaning should be obvious. Your actions must never bring harm upon us, direct or indirect. Yet your selfish act beneath Jerusalem placed us all in danger. Worse still, you brought the enemy to our home.
Now, I'm not going to go over the entire plot of the game beat for beat, but I am going to explain why I think it's one of the better that the series has to offer. Firstly, Altair. Although criticised a lot for being a boring character, which I can't completely disagree with considering some of that dialogue.
You'd do well to assist me. His death benefits the entire land.
Altair is one of the more complex characters in the series. From birth, he was brought up following Al-Mualim's teachings without question. So when he is sent to hunt down 9 targets without clear reason, he does so immediately. But as time goes on, as he speaks with said targets and as he gains more perspective, he begins questioning his own actions. He eventually figures out that all the men are connected. However, he starts to doubt their need to die.
I told you. The others I've slain have said as much to me.
That would make them our allies. And yet we killed them.
Make no mistake, we are nothing like these men. Though their goal sounds noble, the means by which they'd achieve it are not. At least, that's what Al-Mualim told me.
He begins to see their cause as equal to that of the assassins, and this sends his morals into a spiral of confusion. And as even more time passes, it becomes clear to him that there's more going on than meets the eye, as he unravels his former master's plan to take complete control of the Holy Land by eliminating his opposition on each side of the war. This realization comes to him after numerous speeches from various characters throughout the game, the last coming from King Richard I. And as Altair returns to stop his former mentor, who's taken control of the minds of the assassins using the Apple of Eden, his character arc is completed with one throwaway line. He meets a few assassins who aren't brainwashed, and after they agree to help him, he reminds them to try their hardest not to kill their former brothers in arms. He says that just because those men have left behind the creed, it doesn't mean that he should. This is in complete contrast to the Altair we meet at the start of the game, and shows the huge amount of growth he has went through. Another key part of the narrative and his character arc, although kind of minor, is his relationship with Malik. After leaving him to lose both a brother and an arm, Altair is overcome with guilt as Malik continuously shows his hate for him in the early parts of the game. But by the final sequence, Malik recognizes Altair as a brother after he admits he was too arrogant to apologize for his actions.
Malik, before I go, there's something I should say.
Be out with it.
I've been a fool.
Normally I'd make no argument, but what is this? What are you talking about?
All this time, I never told you I was sorry. Too damn proud. You lost your arm because of me. Lost Qadar. You had every right to be angry.
I do not accept your apology.
I understand.
No, you don't. I do not accept your apology because you are not the same man who went with me into Solomon's temple. And so you have nothing to apologize for.
Malik.
Perhaps if I had not been so envious of you, I would not have been so careless myself. I'm just as much to blame.
Now, although Altair's character in Assassin's Creed 1 was handled exceptionally by Desilee's team, as were a bunch of other characters such as Malik, as I already said, Al-Mualim, and of course the modern day cast, the list of well-developed characters outside of that in Assassin's Creed 1 is short. Despite the often chilling or eye-opening speeches they give, pretty much all the targets, bar maybe Robert de Sable, are often just forgettable. There are some decent ones, such as Garnier de Napoleu and Talal, However, most of the Templars Altair hunts down have very little in the way of character. Ubisoft did think to give them all individual positions and roles to differentiate them, creating more unique gameplay scenarios such as the Doctor, the Slaver, the Merchant, the Knight and the Priest. But on a whole, the sequences, final bosses, can very easily clump together in the player's mind. Personally, I think this could have been handled better by very simply adding one or two more cutscenes involving them before the assassination mission to build them up. But I understand that these were most likely cut down due to both time and hardware constraints. A lesson Ubisoft could learn today from AC1's narrative, that they implemented into the game for great reason, is the way the team prioritized the telling of their own story as opposed to teaching a history lesson. In contrast to games like Assassin's Creed 3 and Syndicate, where the wars and historical references are focused on arguably too much, Assassin's Creed 1 keeps the entire crusade as a near non-factor in the story until the very end, and is very much a backdrop more than a main plot point. The Battle of the Assassins and Templars, after all, is not just a war, but the war, the secret war that's been fought throughout history. So when you throw in other random historical references that everyone already knows, it takes away from that secret war that is going on. The stories in the series have always shown to be their best when sticking to the foundation of the first game. This choice by the dev team was possibly due to the time period being chosen off of the original concept of being a Prince of Persia sequel, or maybe it was due to simply being better for gameplay. But either way, it's clear that keeping the historical setting in the background was by far the best decision. Assassin's Creed 1 contains a story filled to the brim with foreshadowing from the very start, along with mystery that keeps you playing. It sets a great foundation for the games to come, and although lulling at some points midway through, the end finds a bunch of twists and reveals that keep you guessing. One of said twists was near the end of the game, when, after assassinating who you think is Robert de Sablon, a woman unmasks herself instead. One of the better decisions that Ubisoft made with this twist was not explaining the entire thing as it happened. They left the character of Maria open after we don't even get told what her real purpose was, and also, of course, having Altair not kill her. This led to her making an appearance in the follow-on game and in Revelations, in which she is killed. The death in Revelations, if it was forced into AC1, would have meant nothing to the player, being just another forgettable target. However, because she was left to linger in the player's mind, along with reappearing in follow-on games, her death was much more significant and impactful when it came. You hear that, Ubisoft? Letting main characters have development over a bunch of games, letting the player get invested in them, that's actually a good thing. Assassin's Creed 1 is a game that's been forgotten by both time and oversaturation. Many today have never played it. There are a fair few that simply hate it. But for me, it'll always have a place in my heart as the game that kicked off what I once thought was the best series of all time. It definitely has its flaws in both gameplay and narrative, as well as, for obvious reason, feeling very dated. But its combination of revolutionary parkour mechanics and exceptional storytelling truly created a fantastic experience, both individually and as a foundation to a franchise. And although Patrice Désilé's original vision may have been soured by mediocre oversaturation, there's no doubt that it paved the way for the industry in the years to come. Thanks for watching. I've been Scarab. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really genuinely appreciate it if you could hit subscribe, hit like, and comment down below what you think I could do to improve these videos. Or just, make side jokes. Anyway, again, thanks for watching. I've been Scarab, and I'll see you in the next one. I recorded that 7 times.